Greetings friends, Jawless Paul here. Welcome to another guides, tips, and tricks video for Hades. In this video we're talking about duo boons. We're going to talk about how good they are, whether you should take them, how good they are relative to each other, and kind of give them a tier ranking system and just talk about how they work and whether or not they are worth going for. I'll say too, if you guys enjoy this content, please subscribe to the channel. I'm putting out this kind of stuff all the time. I love Hades and other roguelikes as well. I stream most Saturday nights at around 8 p.m. Central Time, so come check me out. Anyway, let's get into it. What are some of the duo boons and what do I think of them? Duo boons are all pretty strong. All right, we'll just kind of start there. Almost all of them are worth taking because of the effect that they have. Many of them change the game, change the way your abilities work quite a bit. So I think it's worthwhile to take a look at them and just kind of see. There are a couple exceptions to that though, and we'll talk about those. So first off, I wanna, this is kind of the way that we're gonna think about it. Four questions. All right. First question: does the duo scale with anything? So some of them scale with cast damage. Some of them scale with an attack or a specific special or attack percentage, and then others don't really scale with very much or don't have a scaling mechanic, so the damage doesn't increase beyond what it just says on the duo. So does it scale with anything? Does it need anything else to make it better? So some of them have good effects, but if you get, say, a curse built into it, then it becomes even better, or maybe it's not really good until you've pumped quite a bit of palms and other effects into the ability. So we're going to talk about that. Is it good for individual so bosses or large champion monsters, and then is it good for groups? Some duos are good for both, and those are the best. And then kind of a cheeky criteria: how fun is it? How enjoyable do I think it is to play with? So that's kind of our basic criteria. With that, let's get into the list. All right, so these are not in any particular or specific order. I kind of as I thought of them, I wrote about them, and so that's how we're gonna do it with this video. I'll have a list in the description of when I talk about what boon, if you are curious. First one we're going to talk about is Hunting Blades. All right, Hunting Blades is a boon that takes your Blade Rift ability, specifically your slicing shot. So the Ares boon that changes your cast into a slicing shot or a Blade Rift, sends it out in one direction and it'll bounce off a wall. And if enemies happen to be in the path, then they take a bunch of damage. And so what Hunting Blades does is it makes that blade track enemies. So it follows enemies around and it does damage that way. So this ability has been nerfed recently. It was reduced. The tracking was reduced. How quickly it moved was reduced. And so I guess it changed a little bit. But I did try it in recent weeks to see if it was still busted or if it was all right. This scales with Blade Rift damage, so the damage that you get from just pumping up Ares Blade Rift damage. It scales with Ares Legendary very well. It scales with cast damage. It scales with Artemis's cast boons, so dual shot will do wonders for this. You'll have basically double the Blade Rifts, and then Artemis's Legendary getting more cast stones is great. So it scales with a lot of things, and it scales very well. It scales with like pressure points, crit damage. It'll, the damage will be good. Does it need, so number two, does it need anything else to really shine or to be a good boon? No, it does not. This is one of those boons that even with a basic, even with just the basic Blade Rift, not upgraded at all, this will improve your run dramatically. I've had a few runs where I was going a certain direction and it wasn't working out, and then I found Slicing Shot, and then I thought, oh, I've got some Artemis boons already. I could get Hunting Blades, and it saved the run. I was able to make it to Hades and beat Hades because Hunting Blades is so good. So why is Hunting Blades so good? For obvious reasons, I guess. It's a lot of damage. It's very, very good damage. But maybe also maybe more importantly, it does damage and it keeps you can stay safe while the damage is being done. So you can run off into a corner. You fire all your casts out, and then run away from Hades and hide in a corner. Just run away from him every time he approaches you until the blade rifts wear off. Collect them, rinse, repeat until he is dead. It is an area damage, and you can improve that with some Ares boons that makes them bigger, makes them kind of draw enemies in. So it can cover huge areas of the screen. So yeah, it's good for individuals, and it's good for large groups as well. I think, and number 4, is it fun? I think it's a heck of a lot of fun. It's it's one of those things that truly you can watch your enemies melt before you as the blade rifts take them down. It's pretty amazing. If you haven't tried this boon out before, you should go do that right now. That's my assignment to you, is to try out Hunting Blades and see. It definitely S tier, easily S tier. All right, number 2, Sea Storm. So this is a Zeus Poseidon duo boon. So Sea Storm, you basically it takes all of your abilities from Poseidon that knock enemies back, and then it adds a lightning strike to that attack. So if you have a swing of your sword that does knockback damage from Poseidon, lightning strikes will occur each time the enemy is knocked back, and that lightning strike does 40 damage, I believe. Sea Storm scales with all lightning modifiers, so it'll scale with your double strike, your high voltage, static discharge. It shines. It's okay by itself. It does a decent amount of damage by itself, but it really gets good when you have jolted and ruptured. So you have basically in one attack you can apply privilege status, and if you have an attack that hits a lot or very quickly, that's going to do quite a bit of damage. And then when you scale lightning damage, it's going to be pretty fun to watch. I love this I love this duo boon. It's a lot of fun to get. It's great for both groups of enemies and single targets, because lightning bolts are an area strike, so they do damage to anything in that area. So very good. And then if you get high voltage, that area gets even bigger. And then 4, is it fun to play? It's a heck of a lot of fun to play, because you're knocking things back, and lightning looks awesome. I think lightning is one of the coolest effects in the game right now. I think it's just amazing. I rank this A tier for sure. It needs a little bit to really get going. You need some of those Zeus lightning buffs, and you need a few other things to make it really solid. But once you get that, and if you can get privilege status, then it just gets nuts. It gets crazy. So that's Sea Storm. All right, next we have Merciful End. So the way that this works is you've got Ares boons that do doom damage. So they apply a curse that after a few seconds, a burst of damage goes off. But with this, it's a Ares Athena duo boon. If you do a deflecting attack while the curse is on, the damage goes off early, basically. So, and it does a little bit additional damage as well. So you get the damage immediately from the doom effect rather than having to wait. And so basically you can cycle doom damage very quickly, which is very good, because doom damage is some of the highest single burst damage that you can find. So I rank this as an S tier. It scales with all of your Ares doom abilities, which are very good. It's good. It's really good scaling. It scales well with palms. Palms increase it quite a bit. The diminishing return arc is not as bad as some other abilities. It shines with really fast cycling attacks, so you don't really need really fast cycling attacks so long as you can get a deflect off right after you apply the curse. This will be doing a lot of damage. And then it's good for both single or multiple targets. If you have an attack that does area damage and you apply doom, and then you have an attack that does area damage and then causes the doom to go off, that can be very good for either groups or single target. It's a lot of fun, I think, too. It's got a lot of bursts. So if you've watched speed runs, there are a lot of speed runs that utilize this duo boon to great effect. You get a lot of damage very quickly, if you can cycle your doom damage, and yeah, it can be a lot of fun. Next one, Curse of Longing. So Ares and Aphrodite, the way that this works is it also affects your doom damage. So instead of, so usually after a second your doom damage goes off, and then you have to reapply the curse to get more doom damage. But with Curse of Longing, it will stay on a target if the target is weakened by Aphrodite's curse. So it does 25% of the original doom damage, which is maybe not as much, but you have to remember you're automatically on privilege status, so that's increased by 50% as well. And then all the damage that you're doing during that time is also increased by 50%. Privilege status is an amazing effect to get, and Curse of Longing basically is a duo boon that allows you to have privilege status for longer because both the curses stay on the enemy for longer. Normally with the doom curse, it goes away after the second and you have to reapply it. So this is good for that reason. It scales with any doom damage you've got, and it also scales with your Aphrodite. Like if you've got the extra damage on weakened targets, that it scales with that, obviously. I think it's good. It's really good on its own. It doesn't really require anything to be good, but it's not one of those abilities that can kind of win a run all by itself. It's pretty good. It applies a lot of damage, but will it win a run all by itself? I'm not so sure. I give it a B. No disrespect at all. And it's good for groups. It's good for single target. They're both. It's strong for either one. I don't think it's anything all that crazy looking. To me, it's not like it's more fun to play with, but you're getting lots of ticks of damage, which is fun to watch. It's fun to watch enemies die quickly, right? Everyone likes that. All right, next one, Sweet Nectar. This is Aphrodite and Poseidon. Aphrodite and Dionysus. This boon makes every palm of power that you find have double efficacy. It gives you 2 levels instead of 1. You can imagine this boon is better if you find it in Asphodel or Tartarus, the first 2 areas of the game, and the effectiveness kind of dies down as you get it later on in the run. It provides bonus scaling. It isn't scaled by anything, but it does provide that bonus scaling. It's not as amazing as you might think because of the diminishing returns. Palms, especially for attacks that for percentage increases, palms provide less and less bonus damage the higher or the more palms you get. So it's good, but it's not that amazing. The exceptions to that are notably any hangover effects. Palms typically do 1 whole additional poison damage per palm that you get. 2, I think, for the first one, and then 1 thereafter. And then for blade rifts, any blade rift effect, the palms do additional damage with each additional palm, which can be very, very crazy if you scale it because of how quickly the damage is going off. So those are some exceptions. I think if you were to get Sweet Nectar on a hangover build or a poison build or a blade rift build, that would be pretty incredible, I think. In terms of like how much fun is it to play with, I mean, it's fun to watch your abilities stack up in damage and all your boons get pumped up fast. But is it like more fun than just the base game? I mean, I don't know, not really. I don't think so. So I give this a B if you find it in Elysium or Styx, so at the end of the game, and an A if you get it in Tartarus and Asphodel, because it will provide quite a bit of power. It'll if you get a few palms before, in those areas, and then later on in the game, you will notice a pretty big damage increase. But if you find it later on, there are probably some boons that are better for you than Sweet Nectar will be. So just to be. Next, Lightning Phalanx. So Lightning Phalanx is a Zeus Athena duo boon. Basically, Athena's cast is Divine Shot, I think, and it fires off a large projectile that deflects as it moves. It's kind of slow moving. This makes it so that cast will bounce between enemies. I think it's up to 5 enemies. Basically combining Athena and Zeus's cast abilities, if you kind of imagine it like that. This scales with any cast damage increases. So if you pump up Athena's cast with palms, or if you pump up cast damage with Artemis boons, or with Chaos boons, or with if you buy things at the Well of Charon that boost cast damage, that's all, it all works. It's great. It does what you want to do without too much extra, I don't think. I think it does plenty. The only downside I'd say that it doesn't do is it doesn't apply lightning damage. I kind of think that it should apply damage. So like if you got jolted, it wouldn't work if you had lightning phalanx. Like it wouldn't apply jolted damage because it's not doing any lightning damage, which I think is kind of something that's maybe an oversight. If it's a duo boon between the two of them, it should apply jolted, in my opinion. It's ideal for groups, very ideal for groups, especially if they're tightly packed together. So if you can kind of herd them into a group and then hit them with lightning phalanx, it's very, very good. It's very, very good in sticks where the enemies are usually kind of grouped up. Not amazing against bosses because you hit him and then it may not land on the boss. You kind of want the cast to stick to the enemy, and then you can get the bonus damage from boiling blood, but it doesn't necessarily do that, or you can't control which one it ends up sticking to, or maybe it just bounces off a wall, which is not bad either, but it's just not amazing. As far as how fun it is against groups, this is very, very fun because, I didn't mention this, but Athena's cast does a small amount of area damage. It's not the largest area damage as far as casts go, but it is fairly large. If you have enemies tightly packed together and it's bouncing between the two of them, it's going to do damage each time it hits either one. So that can add up to a lot of damage. It's very, very good in terms of that. For tier, I guess I give it a B. It's solid, but it's not like game breaking like some other things are. So a solid B for lightning phalanx. All right. Next, Deadly Reversal. Deadly Reversal grants 20% increased chance to critically hit following deflections. So it's an Artemis Athena duo boon, and so if you deflect something, if you deflect an attack, you get 20% chance to do critical hits. This scales with any crit damage, and then it scales with any increase in damage that you ever find, right? Because if you have the potential to do crits, then any damage that you find can be doubled, or I think it's doubled. It's just doubled. And then, so that's really good, as you might imagine. It's amazing to be able to scale off of everything. It doesn't really need anything to be good, but you do need a consistent way to deflect attacks. So some notable things would be like Athena's dash is really good. Holy Shield is really good. Any fast moving attack would be good because you're going to be deflecting a lot. It's solid. It's a solid ability. I think it's very, very fun because it can allow you to get crits on things that you don't normally get crits on. It's pretty huge. It's pretty massive. You think about how good Pressure Points is, and that's like 4 or 5% chance to crit on every ability, and it's like, that's insane. So if you can apply bonus critical chance to all of your attacks through this, it's a lot of crits. You're getting a lot of crits. It's good. I give it a tier S for this one. It just, the damage increase for every ability is so strong. So S. All right, next we've got Heart Rend. Heart Rend gives bonus damage to crits if the enemy is weakened. This is an Artemis Aphrodite duo boon. Obviously, if an enemy is weakened and it's critically hit, it does more damage. Now this is okay. This is good. The scaling works with anything you can imagine. For an ability that can crit, those crits will be bigger. It's great if you want big numbers. If you can scale your attacks up that do crit, and you can weaken and then do that, you'll get a lot of good damage. But the trouble is, the trouble with this ability is that it only works on crits, right? So if you think about, you compare this to some other abilities that provide larger increases to every single attack that you do, this really only affects the times that you crit. So you might have very consistent, crits, right? And those numbers will be huge, and that's awesome. But is it as good as some of those other ones where you're you're just boosting up the damage of a core ability every single time. I don't know. It just depends. Do you like to see really big numbers? I mean, crits are already huge anyway. Like, I don't know if you really need, I mean, what do you need in this game anyway? But it's nice if you want to have really big numbers and it's fun. It certainly gets very good points on the fun meter. But because it only affects crits, that's just such a small portion of your overall damage that I'm not sure it's that amazing. So I give it a tier B, B tier for Heart Rend. Next, we have exclusive access. This is a Poseidon Dionysus duo boon. It makes every single boon that you find, the base rarity that it can be is now epic. So it's every boon that you find is going to be at least purple. Those sweet purple boons that you find, they're all gonna show up for you. It's gonna be amazing. How good is this? So number one, it doesn't scale with anything. It basically just provides better scaling for any ability you get after you take this duo boon, right? Because every epic ability or boon is more, palms are more effective on them. They do more damage, they provide more defense, etc., etc. They're just better. It does require that you find it somewhat early in the game to be maximum potency. So if you can find this in Tartarus, that's great. I definitely say it's worth taking in Tartarus. It's good. It requires, yeah. So you have to find it early for it to be most effective. Now here's the reason I don't love this boon a lot. It's okay, but originally I had thought that this was amazing because I thought, well, this should increase your odds of finding duo and legendary boons. If it's saying the minimum boon from there on out is going to be epic, then you could imagine that, okay, as you find more boons, you're more likely to find duos and legendaries. But I don't think that's how it works. I've kind of looked into it a little bit, and it sounds like those level of boons don't really show up based on the rarity of your regular boons. They're only based on whether you meet the prerequisites for that legendary or duo boons. So if you're hoping to get more duos and more legendaries, this boon will not help you with that. It will. It also makes it so you don't have to buy Thread of Ariadne. You don't have to take that anymore because everything is going to be epic. So Charon shop purchase will not do anything for you. So I give this a B if you find it in Asphodel or Tartarus, but probably knock it all the way down to C if you find it in Elysium or in Styx. It just doesn't do enough at the end of the game, in my opinion, especially if you've already got all your tier 1 boons or most of the tier 1 boons. You've got your build kind of underway. Finding this will not be better than a lot of options that you would have it kind of going up against in a boon pack. I would say a C at best, all the way down to being completely unpickable. Like you would never pick it. So whatever ranking you would give to that. That's my big disappointment. My big disappointment was that it doesn't increase your chance of getting duo or legendaries, because that would be cool if it did. All right, Spent Spirit. This is a Athena Aphrodite boon. This basically makes all projectiles 30% slower. It's the only purely defensive duo boon that there is. It doesn't really do anything offensive. I guess if you think about it, you could deflect a little bit easier because projectiles are going 30% slower. But it doesn't really scale with anything. It doesn't require anything to be better, or there's nothing that you could take would make it better. You've already got deflecting abilities. It's not like it's good or bad for groups. The notable thing about this is the casts that Hades sends out that put blood boil on you, that increase his attack damage by 50%. It's nice to be able to dodge these a little bit easier. They recently nerfed this quite a bit. I believe it used to be 60% reduced projectile speed, and that was awesome because there's no way you were ever going to be hit by Hades casts ever, or any of the satyrs in Styx. Those guys weren't going to hit you, even though their projectiles are super fast. Is it fun to play with? I mean, sure, it's cool, but 30%, while a decent reduction in speed, is not the most amazing thing ever, right? It's not crazy good. So I give it a a C, maybe a little bit sub par. I almost never pick it anymore because there's other things that will boost your run quite a bit more than that will. Right, Scintillating Feast. Scintillating Feast is a Zeus Dionysus duo boon. It makes your tipsy shot, which creates festive fog. It makes the fog like a thundercloud that lightning strikes pop out of. This is a cool duo boon. I think it's a lot of fun. So Scintillating Feast, the lightning strikes do 80 damage. And obviously the lightning strike scale with all of the other things that lightning scales with. So double strike, increased strike size with high voltage, and can apply jolted. All those things will apply. So it's kind of like a nice area control point for your cast. So you set it up and then it does a ton of like area damage. It's good against groups or against individuals because lightning damage is dope. Lightning damage is amazing. I think that any ability that utilizes lightning damage has a lot of potential to do quite a bit of damage. And great thing about lightning is it can't be blocked. It can't. Yeah, and that by itself is tremendous. In order to make it as the best that it can be, it requires some lightning scaling. So you're going to want to find, double strike, that kind of thing. Which, if you're in a lightning build anyway, you're going to want that for sure. Boosting those lightning strikes is always a good idea. I think double strike is an amazing boon. I love the flavor of this. I think that this one is super fun. I don't love the lob mechanic, so I almost always, if I'm going for Scintillating Feast, I almost always take the Hera bow so that I can deliver my tipsy shots wherever I want to instantaneously. It's a lot more fun that way, I think. Maybe if you play on mouse and keyboard, it's maybe less of an issue, but yeah, I like it with the Hera bow a lot. I give this an A, solid A, very good damage. Yeah, it covers a nice big area, applies lightning, applies jolted. What's not to like? It's a solid build. All right, next we have Low Tolerance. This is a Dionysus Aphrodite duo. Basically, you're allowed 5 stacks of Hangover, and this increases the number of stacks by 3. So now you can have 8 Hangover doing damage, and as each one stacks, it stacks the damage that it ticks at. I think every half second it ticks. This boon, it scales with Hangover damage, which, as I mentioned before, Hangover scales really well with palms because of the way that palms work with the diminishing returns. They're not so good maybe against or on like percentage increases, but each one provides 1 additional Hangover damage, which it you can see how that would work. It adds onto itself. So it does require quite a bit to be good. I'd say you really need to have a way to apply lots of poison stacks or Hangover stacks. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again. Lots of stacks very quickly, because the Hangover goes away after a few seconds. So each one that you apply will then be going away. So if you can't apply them very fast, then this is almost not even worth taking. On some builds, I'd say it's not worth it. So on a build that you don't have a way to apply lots of stacks of Hangover at once, it's probably a B tier ability. I mean, you might get 6 or 7 stacks, maybe even 8 if you can find a way to attack fast enough to get the stacks on. But it's S tier for some. So for the Charon bow. Charon bow is amazing with this because your special, it hits the same target. So if you're applying stacks of Hangover, it's going to apply 8 stacks instantaneously, which is amazing. It's really good. That's a very potent combination right there. Especially if you can get your weak effect on your attack and then your Hangover on your special. That's gonna be a fun run. That's gonna be a lot of damage. I'd say the spear triple hit dash, the serrated blades would be really good with this. Chaos shield to some extent because it's shotguns. Spread fire with the rail is really good. You get lots of stacks that way. However, like I said, many builds will not be able to apply 8 stacks before the first applications of Hangover wear off. So, you know, take that as for whatever it's worth. It may not be useful for your build. It's best for single target, really. Like you're gonna get maybe some effectiveness off of groups, especially if you've got Dionysus's call. That will be very, very good if you can get lots and lots of stacks that way. But it's really, really good against single targets. So against bosses, this does tons and tons of damage. You'll have a lot of fun with it. It'll be very fun. So I like it a lot, but tier B for most things, tier S for those special builds that can apply lots of poison at once. All right. Next, we have Vengeful Mood. Vengeful Mood is the duo boon between Zeus and Ares. Basically, you have these revenge abilities that if you take a hit, the revenge ability goes off. For Zeus, it's a lightning strike. For Ares, it's like a little area that explodes and it applies doom to any enemies in the area. There's also one for Aphrodite that applies weak. And then there's one for Athena, I believe, that explodes out and it doesn't apply anything, but it just does damage. So there's a few different ways to get this revenge damage. What Vengeful Mood does is it makes that any revenge damage that you have will go off. I think it's every 3.5 seconds or something like that. The damage goes off automatically without you taking a hit. So it scales with all of the possible revenge boons. It scales with doom. With that doom damage, it scales with any lightning effects that you have, because Zeus is, I mean, anytime you have lightning, you can get double strike, you can get high voltage, and you can get jolted, and so those are all great. And obviously, any weak effects or any deflect effects are awesome that way. So this is pretty cool. I really like this boon. I like the flavor of it. I think it's a lot of fun. You want to get at least two or more revenge boons for this to even be worth it at all. I think it's not that amazing. If you can get all 4, then it could be pretty cool, but it doesn't hit that fast, right? You don't get a ton of them. You don't get a ton of damage out with this boon. It's good for groups or bosses, depending on how close you are to enemies. If they're close by you and it happens to go off, and you know it'll apply that damage, doggone it, and it'll be some good damage. But is it that amazing? No, I don't think so. I give this a tier C. It's a lot of fun. The flavor of it is great. You can kind of design these revenge builds where you're doing all this damage, you know, just kind of randomly, or not randomly, every few seconds, the damage all goes off in this one big burst. It's kind of cool. It's fun. I recommend you give it a try. Is it the strongest thing? Is it going to break your run? No, it is not. It is not that amazing. All right, next we have Lightning Rod. Lightning Rod is an Artemis Zeus duo boon. So the way that this works is if your cast stone is sitting and it hasn't been picked up and it's just waiting there, it will fire off lightning. Okay, and it's a pretty large area around the stone. It drops lightning damage. This boon, because it uses lightning, and it's 100 lightning damage, by the way. Because it utilizes lightning, because it's 100 damage, it's pretty good. It scales with all of the lightning things, like I've mentioned before several times. Lightning is really cool. It does a lot of good things and has a lot of ways to boost it up that are great. It doesn't really require much, because you can just, if you leave them out and it's doing 100 damage, or if the lightning damage is increasing, or if it crits, or any of those things happen, it's totally worth it. And you don't, it might even be better than your cast. It probably is better than your cast, actually, to just leave it sitting there. It's great for single or multiple targets, like I've talked about before. Lightning does area damage, so it's very good. It isn't blocked by shields, so long as the strike, I guess if the strike happens in front of a shield, it'll block the shield will block that effect. But the lightning, if it goes even a little bit behind the shield, it will not block it. So it's great. I like this one, but I find it a little bit annoying, because my automatic my automatic knee-jerk response is always to pick up my cast stones like immediately when I see them lying around. So to like intentionally leave them sitting there so that they do the lightning damage is a little bit tough for me. I don't do that naturally. So it's maybe a little bit awkward to play with, but the damage is good. So you kind of wanna utilize it. It's pretty sweet. So lightning rod I give an A to. I give it an A. It's pretty solid. All right. So now actually we get into the duo boons from the new expansion, or the new update, the long winter update. So the first one that we're going to talk about is Crystal Clarity. This is a Artemis Demeter duo boon. The Demeter's cast turns your cast stones into these like laser crystals that fire a laser. The big problem with them is that they don't move. They don't track with enemies very quickly. So the idea is that it moves towards enemies, but without the duo boon, it moves very slowly. So this increases that, makes it move faster. It scales with cast damage. All the cast damage modifiers you can think of, the chaos ones, the ones from Wells of Charon, Artemis bonuses, obviously. The trouble with this, I think, is that it requires a lot of palms to make the damage worth it, right? Like it doesn't have very good base damage, I don't think. It requires a lot of palms to be good, and then even then it's not that amazing. I did a run recently, and I took probably like 4 or 5, which for most cast builds you're doing a ton of damage with that, and I didn't really feel like I was doing a ton. It's okay for individuals, but against groups it's pretty bad, and the reason it's bad is the laser does not pierce, so it stops at enemies, and that one thing kind of makes it pretty bad, I think. You want to be able to hit multiple enemies, in my opinion. Any cast, a lot of the good casts hit multiple enemies. The way that it's set up, it just doesn't do enough damage, and it doesn't do area damage. It can be really good. I mean, if you boost it up with a bunch of cast buffs, like, if you've got 6 of them from Artemis's legendary, or you've gotten, other bonuses, it can do very decent damage to a single target. So for bosses, it's pretty sweet. But of the duos, it's probably one of my least favorite, and it looks cool. So the lasers look cool, and having them track a little bit faster is pretty cool. But they still don't track fast enough to stay with enemies as they're moving across the screen, right? It's going to follow them, but it's not going to get there fast enough to do damage the whole time it's moving. So I give Crystal Clarity a B. It's not completely terrible. It does improve the ability quite a bit, but the base ability is not good enough, in my opinion, as it is, and Crystal Clarity doesn't do enough to fix it. Okay, next we have Cold Fusion. Cold Fusion is a Zeus Demeter duo boon. Cold Fusion makes your static discharge, your jolted effects do not expire when an enemy does an attack. Normally jolted, it applies, and the enemy takes damage when they attack next. So jolted is very good. The damage on that is usually very high. And what Cold Fusion does is it makes it last 10 seconds. So for 10 seconds, whatever attacks that enemy does, it applies the damage. So this can be somewhat good against some enemies, and then against other enemies, it's like it will kill them instantly. So there's a lot of situations where you're just applying tons and tons of lightning damage. It doesn't really require very much to be good. The other reason why it's good is it's 10 seconds of a curse. So if you've got another curse on, then that's providing privileged status. So that's an extra bit of damage. I give Cold Fusion an S tier. It's good for groups and individuals, because if you can apply Jolted, usually you can apply Jolted to groups because lightning is area, and then chain lightning bounces. So you're usually applying it to groups. And it's good because it explodes and it does damage. It does area damage. As far as flavor, not a lot of flavor to this one. This one is just more damage. Your jolted suddenly goes from being a decent status curse to being an amazing status curse, like one of the best status curses maybe. So I give this one an S tier. It's very good. All right, next we've got Ice Wine. Ice Wine is a Dionysus Demeter duo boon. So when you fire your trippy shot, it hits for the the initial damage of the cast, and then there's a secondary burst that does 50% of the initial cast damage again. So you can imagine this scales with all your cast damage, because if you're increasing the damage of your original cast, you're increasing the damage of Ice Wine. You can get some pretty good damage, and already the trippy shot is one of the higher damage burst casts out there. It's pretty good in that sense, and so you're just adding even more damage. It's basically increasing the cast by 50%. It's decent for groups and individuals because it's an area damage. It's a larger area, and it looks cool, and it makes trippy shot even more. It does even more damage. So trippy shot is already a pretty solid attack, and then you have it burst again, and it's great. But I wouldn't say that this is like game breaking. I give it tier B. Because it does damage, but it's not like, I've never felt like, oh man, I got Ice Wine. Now my cast is really cool, or it's really good. I don't really feel that way. It's just an additional little burst of damage. It's good, but it's not like crazy. So tier B, it's good. Nothing super crazy though. All right, last duo boon on the list, Blizzard Shot. Blizzard Shot is a Poseidon Demeter duo boon. It takes the cast of Poseidon and it makes it a slower moving projectile. It doesn't stick to enemies. It doesn't explode, but as it moves, it sends out these swirls that do. It's like an area of swirls that they all do damage. And yeah, so it kind of covers a larger area from wherever you send it out. It kind of turns it into like a cloud of damage. You could think of it that way. Until it hits a wall or yeah, and it'll go through enemies. Like it'll attack enemies, and it doesn't just stop at an enemy, it goes through, but it will stop at a wall. So if you scale it with flood shot damage and with cast damage, obviously all those things will apply. It works with all that. It requires flood shot and a Demeter boon, and I don't know why. I don't know why, but it does. It's always been difficult for me to find it. I've only found it twice, even though I've gone for it like 7 times. But that's okay. It's a roguelite. I shouldn't be expecting the same thing. Whenever I want it, I shouldn't get what I want. It's good area control damage. It's good single target damage too. It does pretty high damage. It applies both chill, and if you have Razor Shoals, it will apply Rupture as well. So it's another one of those single source privilege status, which is pretty awesome. It's nice to have that. So it's very slow, but it kind of fills the screen with these swirls, and so it's a lot of fun. I think it's a cool looking build, or a cool looking duo for sure. It's pretty sweet. So Blizzard Shot, I give an A to. Solid A. Takes a already good area cast attack, and it makes it even better. It's nice too because it takes it. Normally with flood shot, you hit the enemy and it's stuck in the enemy for however long the cast stone stays in the enemy before it falls out. But this does not stick to enemies. It passes through enemies, so you can kind of just keep firing it off. It makes a cast build possible, whereas with flood shot, unless you have a way of getting the casts back out of the enemies quickly, like with Poseidon's sword, it's not the best cast for a cast focused build. It's not the best. So Blizzard Shot kind of takes care of that and makes it better. Friends, we've gotten to the end of the list. These are all of the duo boons in Hades. We've covered them all. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe, but we got them all. I'm sure that I've upset someone by dissing their favorite duo boon. If I have, please leave a comment. Explain your reasoning. Explain your thinking. I'd love to chat with you about it. Yeah, I think that the duo boons are some of is probably one of my favorite things about Hades. The way that the duo boons work, and just their weird interactions that they can have with different weapon aspects and whatnot. So I think they're a lot of fun. I think they're a fun way to play the game, to go after them. I've talked about in another video how to kind of make sure you find duo boons, or how to increase your likelihood of finding duo boons. So you can check that out. But anyway, friends, thank you so much for watching. We will catch you in the next one. Take care.